Static Major. On February 25, 2008, inside Baptist Hotel East in Louisville, Kentucky, Static Major checked into a room he would never walk out of. He was just 33 years old.
Today, known in the music industry as Static, Garrett died Monday from complications from a medical procedure. He was only 33 years old.
Only days earlier, Static had been in Las Vegas, draped in Versace, popping champagne in a stretch Hummer while filming Lil Wayne's Lollipop, a song he wrote that was on its way to becoming a global #1 hit. But in that hospital room, the man who helped shape the sound of the 90s for AALIYAH and Genuine was a scared patient living out his worst fear. For years, Static had told his wife, Avanti Garrett, and his close friends that hospitals kill people. It wasn't just paranoia, it was rooted in trauma. When Static was a teenager, his sister Melinda died in a hospital at only 22 from heart complications, and he never shook that loss. So when he started experiencing flu-like symptoms, slurred speech, a drooping eye, extreme fatigue, he hesitated to seek help. When he finally went to a hospital in Georgia, doctors misdiagnosed him with acid reflux and sent him home. That delay may have been the first strike, but Louisville is where everything truly unraveled. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with myasthenia gravis, a rare autoimmune disorder that weakens muscle function. The treatment plan involved plasmapheresis, a process that filters toxins from the blood, which required inserting a catheter into his neck. The procedure was performed by Dr. Dean J. Wickel. According to court depositions later filed by the family, the moment the catheter was placed, Static complained of intense pain. He told nurse Diane Richards, "This hurts too much. There's something wrong in my organs." And he told his wife, "I'm not feeling them effing with my arteries." His body was clearly signaling that something was wrong. Most likely the catheter had punctured a vital vessel or his lung. Instead of rushing him into emergency surgery, staff made the decision to remove the catheter. When the nurse pulled the line out, everything collapsed at once. Static went into respiratory distress and began convulsing. His wife was ushered into the hallway as a code blue echoed through the room for over an hour. The autopsy later listed his death as complications associated with dialysis catheter placement, a clinical way of saying medical error. Avanti filed a negligence lawsuit, and during the case, the doctor admitted he would have removed the catheter himself had he known how much pain Static was in.
A gold casket now holds the body of Stephen Static Garrett. His private funeral held hundreds. There was standing room only in the sanctuary for friends, family, and others who knew him best.
But here's the detail that still fuels conspiracy theories in Louisville. Static had a roommate in that hospital room. Someone witnessed everything. When the family's lawyers demanded the identity of this witness, the hospital refused, citing privacy laws. The case was quietly settled, and that witness remains anonymous to this day. Static Major died just 2 weeks before a lollipop changed music forever. Lisa Left Eye Lopez. In April 2002, deep in the jungles outside La Ceiba, Honduras, Lisa Left Eye Lopez was on a spiritual mission. She had taken up residence at Ushered Village, a compound run by the controversial herbalist Dr. Sebi, and brought along an entourage including the R&B group Egypt, whom she was mentoring, to undergo an extreme cleanse.
Hey, get over there. Nice job.
Hi! Honduras!
Hello.
Honduras!
It's not over yet.
But the cleansing went too far. According to Dr. Sebi's own journals later recovered, even he became alarmed, writing that Lisa had grown too sensitive to the other realm and warning her that she had opened doors that should remain closed. 19 days before her death, the paranoia began. On April 6, 2002, Lisa was riding in a minibus driven by her assistant Stephanie Patterson when they struck a 10-year-old Honduran boy who had stepped off a median. The child died instantly. Lisa was devastated, but when she learned his name, Byron Isaul Fuentes Lopez, her grief turned into terror. She went to the morgue, paid roughly $3,700 toward his medical bills and funeral, and couldn't shake the coincidence. She began telling friends and the documentary crew filming her that death had made a mistake. It was supposed to take her, not him, and that it would come back to correct it. From that point forward, Lisa spoke about dying not as a possibility, but as an appointment. On April 25th, That appointment arrived. Lisa was driving a rented Mitsubishi Montero Sport with about 8 people inside, including her sister Raindrop and members of Egypt. They were heading to Sambo Creek to film more footage. Lisa was behind the wheel. A truck slowed in front of her as another car approached in the opposite lane. Lisa swerved left to avoid the truck, then overcorrected. The SUV rolled multiple times, throwing bodies and twisted metal into the trees. In a crash that completely destroyed the vehicle, 7 people survived with cuts and broken bones. Only 1 person died. Lisa suffered a fatal fracture at the base of her skull and was killed instantly.
Lopez, who was not licensed, was driving a Mitsubishi SUV carrying 7 other passengers. Reports say she lost control of the vehicle while going too fast. Lopez suffered head trauma and died instantly.
In the final frames of the footage, witnesses say she didn't look panicked, she didn't scream, she looks resigned, like she recognized whatever she'd been running from for 3 weeks had finally caught up to her. Donny Hathaway. On January 13, 1979, on a freezing night in New York City, Donny Hathaway, the sole legend behind The Ghetto and This Christmas, fell 15 stories from room 1505 of the Essex House Hotel.
In January of 1979, the music world was mourning the sudden loss of Donny Hathaway. He's widely considered one of the founders of American soul music.
Police ruled it a suicide almost immediately, claiming his paranoid schizophrenia had finally overtaken him. But when you examine the forensic details from that night, details buried for decades, the official story doesn't just feel shaky, it collapses. Earlier that evening, Donny had been in a recording session with Roberta Flack when he suddenly stopped, terrified, shouting that white people were trying to kill him and had hooked his brain up to a machine to steal his music. He told his manager he had uncovered proof that the industry was robbing black artists and that he had documents to expose it. Then there's the hotel window. It wasn't smashed. The heavy safety glass had been carefully removed and placed neatly on the bed. There was no suicide note. Even stranger, police found no fingerprints on the window frame, despite the fact that removing glass that heavy would require force and grip. The autopsy raised even more questions. Donny had a compression fracture in his left wrist and a fingernail torn sideways, injuries consistent with struggling or grabbing onto something. He had a bruise on his neck shaped like a handprint, and his shins were completely unbruised, despite the fact that climbing onto a radiator to reach that window should have left marks. Hotel records revealed a chilling 15-minute gap. Donny entered his room at 7:30 p.m., the room went silent at 7:45, and by 8, he was dead. In that short window of time, a man who believed he was about to be murdered supposedly dismantled a window, wiped his fingerprints, and jumped without making a sound. And those documents he claimed proved royalty theft, the papers he had been holding in the lobby, were never found. David Ruffin. On June 1, 1991, at 2:55 a.m., a hired limousine screeched up to the emergency entrance of the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. The driver, Donald Brown, dragged an unconscious man from the back seat and told ER staff he had overdosed, then disappeared into the night without answering a single question. An hour later, at 3:55 a.m., the man was pronounced dead. For a brief moment, he was just another John Doe in a Philadelphia morgue. That changed when the FBI ran his fingerprints and got a shocking match. The body belonged to Davis Eli Ruffin, the raspy, unforgettable voice behind The Temptations' Is My Girl and Ain't Too Proud to Beg. Authorities quickly ruled it an accidental crack cocaine overdose, but when you follow the money and look at the physical evidence, it starts to feel less like an overdose and more like a robbery that went sideways. Just days earlier, Ruffin had returned from a successful reunion tour in England with Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards. While the others accepted their pay through bank drafts, Ruffin, burned too many times by the industry, demanded cash. He was reportedly carrying a money belt with $40,000 in large bills, plus another $50,000 in traveler's checks. That night, Ruffin ended up at a row house on the 5100 block of Jefferson Street in West Philadelphia. It wasn't a home, it was a crack house. He was there with a man named William Noel. Police reports claimed Ruffin smoked 10 vials of crack in under 30 minutes. For a 50-year-old man with heart problems, that alone could be fatal. But when authorities searched his body at the hospital, the money belt was gone, the traveler's checks were gone. The man who had just cashed out a major tour had exactly $53 in his pockets. His family never bought the overdose story. When David's daughter, Nedra Ruffin, finally saw her father's body, she was horrified. She later said his head was swollen like a basketball, pointing to possible blunt force trauma, not just heart failure. His body was covered in unexplained bruises and scratches consistent with a struggle. It didn't look like he simply collapsed. It looked like he'd been beaten. When the family asked for his clothes, the hospital delivered another disturbing twist. They had already been destroyed, reportedly incinerated because they were bloody and considered a health hazard. Any potential forensic evidence was gone. Suspicion centered on the people in the crack house, especially a woman named Diane Showers and the men who helped him, but no charges were ever filed. Then came the darkest moment of all. When Nedra and other relatives tried to push for a second independent autopsy, David's own brother, Quincy Ruffin, shut it down. He reportedly warned them, "If you do, someone else in this family might end up dead." That threat ended the investigation. AALIYAH. On August 25, 2001, at Marsh Harbor Airport in the Abaco Islands of the Bahamas, the sun was setting on what should have been a victory lap. AALIYAH Dana Houghton, the 22-year-old princess of R&B, had just finished shooting the video for Rock the Boat. She was exhausted, ready to go home, and surrounded by a team eager to get back to Miami. But on that quiet runway, something far darker than a simple accident was unfolding. For years, the world was told it was just pilot error and too much luggage.
Finished shooting another video. But while some are wondering whether the plane had been weighed down by too much equipment, possibly causing one of the engines to fail, for those who knew AALIYAH, no explanation will ever ease the pain of their loss.
But witness statements and toxicology reports paint a much more disturbing picture, one suggesting AALIYAH may have been unconscious before the plane ever left the ground. According to Kingsley Russell, whose family owned the taxi service transporting the crew, AALIYAH was immediately uncomfortable when she saw the small twin-engine Cessna 402B waiting for them. She had expected a larger aircraft. Seeing the tiny plane, she reportedly refused to board, complained of a headache, and retreated to the back of the van to cool off in the air conditioning. She was firm. She did not want to get on that plane. That's when things took a criminal turn. According to Russell's account detailed in Baby Girl, better known as AALIYAH, someone from her team gave her a sleeping pill to calm her down. She fell into a deep sleep in the van. Witnesses say she didn't walk onto that aircraft, she was carried. Allegedly loaded aboard like luggage, strapped into her seat without knowing she was about to take off in a flying coffin. And that's exactly what it was. The pilot, Luis Morales III, had no business in that cockpit. Just 12 days earlier, he'd been arrested in Florida for possession of crack cocaine and was on probation. He wasn't even certified to fly for Black Hawk International Airways. Toxicology reports later confirmed that at the time of takeoff, Morales had cocaine and alcohol in his system. The man responsible for AALIYAH's life was high, drunk, and unqualified. The plane itself was dangerously overloaded. The entourage insisted on bringing heavy video equipment, even after the pilot reportedly warned them about the weight. The aircraft ended up carrying 700 to 900 pounds more than what it was rated for, with most of that weight concentrated in the rear. When Morales tried to lift off, physics did the rest. The plane barely cleared the trees before stalling and crashing just 200 feet from the runway. AALIYAH died instantly from severe head trauma and burns.
The plane crash that killed a rising star in the world of music and film. Reaction today after AALIYAH and 8 others were killed when their plane went down.
But here's the detail that still haunts everyone who reads the full report. When recovery crews found her, she was still strapped into her seat, lying about 20 feet from the wreckage. PHYLLIS HYMAN. On June 30th, 1995, New York City was preparing for royalty. The Apollo Theater in Harlem was buzzing. PHYLLIS HYMAN, the sophisticated soul giant whose voice could shake walls, was scheduled to perform alongside the Whispers. But backstage, a tragic scene was unfolding at her apartment at 211 West 56th Street. Around 2 p.m., just hours before showtime, Phyllis was found unconscious in her bedroom. Empty bottles of Tuinal, a powerful barbiturate, sat nearby alongside vodka. She had made a deliberate decision to end her life. She was rushed to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, but it was too late. At 3:50 p.m., Phyllis Hyman was pronounced dead. She was 45 years old, just 6 days shy of her 46th birthday.
Tonight at the apparent suicide of popular jazz singer Phyllis Hyman. The 45-year-old Hyman was supposed to sing at the Apollo Theater tonight, but her assistant found her unconscious in her Midtown apartment this afternoon. Police say pill bottles and notes were found near Hyman's body. Jazz singer Phyllis Hyman dead of an apparent suicide at age 45.
Police found a short suicide note that didn't express rage, only exhaustion. It read, "I'm tired, I'm tired. Those of you that I love know who you are. May God bless you." That phrase summed up a 20-year battle with the industry and her own mental health. Phyllis had lived with bipolar disorder since the 1980s, struggling to manage it while navigating a business that demanded perfection. She self-medicated with food and alcohol, leading to weight gain that the image-obsessed industry relentlessly criticized. By the early 90s, she weighed over 300 pounds, battling depression and body dysmorphia even as she topped the R&B charts in 1991 with Don't Wanna Change the World. But the deepest wounds came from the business itself. During her time at Arista Records, she clashed with Clive Davis, feeling ignored and sidelined. She watched as resources poured into Whitney Houston while her own jazz-leaning sophisticated sound was pushed aside. Phyllis refused to make cookie-cutter pop music, and she paid for it. She once said plainly, "I was pretty much overlooked and ignored. She was too tall, too bold, and too real for the mold they wanted." The most haunting thing she left behind wasn't the note, it was her music. 5 months after her death, her album I Refuse to Be Lonely was released. Listening to it now feels like hearing a ghost narrate her own goodbye. The songs were recorded in the months before she died, and the lyrics are painfully prophetic. On Give Me One Good Reason to Stay, she sings about packed bags and walking out the door. Critics later called the album a swan song, a suicide note set to music. She had been telling the world exactly how she felt. Everyone just missed it. Sean LeVert. On March 24, 2008, in Cleveland, Ohio, Sean LeVert, the 39-year-old son of OJ's legend Eddie LEVERT and a platinum-selling artist himself with the group LEVERT, walked into the Cuyahoga County Jail. He was locked up over approximately $89,025 in back child support and sentenced to 22 months in a facility that would become his grave in less than a week.
He was serving 22 months in an Ohio jail for failure to pay more than $89,000 in child support.
During intake, Sean did everything by the book. He handed staff a valid prescription bottle of Xanax, 2 milligrams 3 times a day for severe anxiety. The sentencing judge had even attached a note to the sheriff's department stressing Sean's medical needs, but once those steel doors closed, none of that mattered. Jail staff confiscated his medication, which is standard procedure, but then failed to provide it back or offer a substitute. For 6 days, Sean went through cold turkey benzodiazepine withdrawal inside a jail cell. That's a medical emergency that can kill. His body began breaking down. He started hallucinating, telling guards he was seeing monsters. He was sweating, shaking, panicking, begging for help. But instead of recognizing a medical crisis, guards and contracted medical staff labeled him difficult. They treated his symptoms as behavioral issues, not a life-threatening withdrawal. On Sunday, March 30th, things turned fatal. Sean was pounding on his cell door deep in psychosis. Instead of calling a doctor or rushing him to the infirmary, deputies escalated the situation. They strapped him into a restraint chair, immobilizing his wrists, ankles, and chest. For someone already in respiratory distress with high blood pressure, it was essentially a death sentence. Witnesses say Sean's breathing became shallow. He started drooling, his eyes rolled back. By the time staff realized he wasn't calming down, he was dying. It was too late. He was rushed to Lutheran Hospital, but the damage had already been done. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival.
According to the warden, LEVERT's breathing then became shallow and he was taken to a hospital where he died less than an hour later.
The coroner initially ruled the death natural causes, complicating by sarcoidosis and withdrawal, a conclusion that outraged his family and much of Cleveland's black community. The pain was doubled by the fact that Sean's older brother, Gerald LEVERT, had died just 16 months earlier. Eddie LEVERT lost 2 sons in under 2 years. The family filed a wrongful death lawsuit accusing the jail of negligence and denial of essential medication. In 2010, the county and medical contractor paid a $4 million settlement while admitting no wrongdoing. Still, Sean's death led to real change. Ohio passed Sean's Law, requiring county jails to verify and continue inmates' prescriptions, especially benzodiazepines, so no one else would die this way in state custody. Tony Thompson. On June 1, 2007, in Waco, Texas, around 10 p.m., security guards patrolling the Trentwood Garden Apartments noticed a body slumped behind one of the buildings near an industrial air conditioning unit. It was Tony Thompson, just 31 years old, the falsetto prodigy once compared to Michael Jackson, the voice behind High Five's I Like the Way, The Kissing Game. The autopsy revealed he died from chlorodifluoromethane, Freon. He had been inhaling refrigerant gas from the AC unit. Even more heartbreaking, toxicology showed methadone in his system. Methadone blocks opioid highs, meaning Tony was trying to stay clean. But in a moment of desperation, needing an escape that methadone wouldn't block, he turned to huffing coolant, a cheap, dangerous high that cost him his life. To understand how a platinum-selling artist ends up dying behind an apartment complex, you have to rewind 2 years. In 2005, Tony tried to rebuild. He formed a new version of High Five and released The Return on his own label, In Depth Entertainment. But his former bandmates Russell Neal, Marcus Sanders, and Treston Irby moved quickly to shut it down. The takedown was public and brutal. On November 4, 2005, Tony appeared on The Wendy Williams Show to promote the album. Live on air, Wendy handed him a cease and desist letter from the original members' attorneys and read it aloud, informing him he didn't own the High Five name and was being sued. The comeback died on the spot.
Are you guys about to get sued? You can't use the name?
There's some of the older members like trying to sue, but I don't think that would happen.
My name is on that. Tony forgot, evidently, papers that we signed when we was younger.
Tony?
I don't have no rights. I have a lot of rights. Marcus Sanders, who's another
he has no right.
Weeks later, on November 22nd, the lawsuit was officially filed in federal court. It didn't just target Tony, it went after distributors like Amazon and Walmart, freezing sales and killing momentum. Tony, the voice that built High Five, was legally blocked from earning off his own legacy. He didn't have the money to fight a federal trademark war. Broken and stripped of his identity, Tony retreated to Waco. As the lawsuit dragged on, his addiction resurfaced. The cruel irony was that the case wasn't dismissed until August 2009, more than 2 years after Tony was found dead behind that AC unit. In the end, the remaining members reunited and toured under the High Five name. They reclaimed the brand. But the voice that made it famous was already gone. Charmaine Maxwell. On February 28, 2015, in Ladera Heights, Los Angeles, a Saturday night ended in so much blood that first responders initially treated the scene as a violent homicide. Charmaine Maxie Maxwell, the grounding force behind Brownstone, was dead at 46. But it wasn't a shooting, overdose, or jealous lover. According to police, she was killed by a wine glass. Earlier that day, Maxie had been at her son Nikolai's soccer game, reportedly in great spirits. She had stepped away from the spotlight to build a quiet life with her husband, Danish producer Karsten Solshock Shack. Around 9 p.m., Solshock came home to find her lying near the doorway between the house and the back patio, unconscious and bleeding heavily from her neck. Police said Maxie had been holding a wine glass when she slipped or fell backward. The glass shattered, and in what they called a 1 in a million trajectory, a shard pierced the back of her neck twice. One fragment severed her carotid artery, the main blood supply to the brain. When that artery is cut, death comes fast. By the time her husband found her, she had already lost too much blood. She died in the ambulance on the way to Cedars-Sinai. Then came the contradiction. U.S. outlets like TMZ reported she was home after the game and fell near the patio door. But Danish media, where Solskjaer is a celebrity, reported something completely different, claiming Maxi collapsed at the soccer match after falling from bleachers or along the sidelines. A private home versus a public field. Two wildly different stories that were never reconciled, fueling speculation that something important was being hidden. There were even whispers of suicide because of the neck injury. Her brother Brandon immediately shut that down on Twitter, saying, "My sister died in the most terrible way and I'm in so much pain right now," firmly denying it. LAPD found no signs of domestic violence and ruled it a freak accident. What makes it even heavier is Maxi's legacy. Brownstone was the first group signed to Michael Jackson's MJJ Music. Handpicked by the King of Pop himself, they were told to build something timeless. For fans who follow the so-called MJJ curse, Maxi's sudden violent death fits an eerie pattern tied to artists from that era.